going on?
I am recording also, and here we are at the next pod.
This is a huge, mega, epic history of maybe the most messed with country in Earth history.
Ever. Gosh, it certainly seems so.
This is what? The Gates of Europe, about the history of Ukraine. And, yep, I wanted to read it because I teach Ukrainian students over the internet. And, man, this was really, significant. Not easy. Lots of information that you are expected to know. And, with Ukrainian words thrown in and certain language that just references, as we all know, as the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire tended to do, he used his cavalry to cross the the Bosporus Strait, which typically had winters of blood. You're just being talked at as though, you're in some, like, a meeting. You're in a class, and you're like, am I in the right class? You're wondering.
like you're supposed to know something, and guess what? You don't, because this is the part of the world that we never ever focused on in any class I ever took in my life. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we hear these terms thrown around: balkanization and USSR and breadbasket of Europe, but we don't know. I never knew what exactly they meant, where exactly they meant, and to whom they exactly referred. And I'm a little bit out of the dark now, but not entirely, I have to say.
Yeah, before the actual information, though, this was where, man, I became, I had a reading system that was pretty good. I was like, yep, I read books now. I have a book podcast. I read. But this one was, I had to have my phone set up with Google Gemini there. I was typing into it as I'm reading and then taking notes. And then I upgraded to speaking to the AI. And it would speak back. It would tell me, oh, yeah, you're talking about, the Cossacks. What a crazy time that was. And blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, yeah, you have a teacher with you as you're with this book. And then as terms are thrown out, you have to go to the AI. So I thought, how did people ever try to read this before there was AI to literally help you every single step?
Well, I don't use AI, but I use Wikipedia a lot. And some of these words, like Cossack, was familiar to me, but as a fashion style, with a raised collar and buttons on the side because of movies. Some of these things we were familiar with, but the historical references that we probably should know, but don't, have been... I was looking up things on Wikipedia all the time, and also trying to get some kind of context to kind of create some kind of universal timeline, like what was going on in the rest of Europe, what was going on in the United States during this time. And it was extremely difficult. It was difficult because you were focusing on this one little corner of the world, and you have to become your own synthesizer for what's going on in the rest of the world. Also, it took me a long time to realize that his technique in the book, his writing technique, is the first paragraph of every chapter is kind of a summary of what happened, and then goes into detail on all of that for the rest of the chapter. And so I got easily confused, I will admit. Well, did this happen before or after, or didn't he already talk about this? So it took me a long time to realize that summarized in the first paragraph and then in depth for the rest of the chapter. But once I got used to that, then I was a little bit better off. But that took a long time.
Yeah, it was really this is a work. And
yes,
even though the book tries to get everything in from literally 1,000 years of history. Um, he's like, I can't put everything in, so you got to pay attention to what's the chapter name. Suddenly, those are very,
Oh yeah.
in other books, they're like, here's a clever little title for you of this chapter. This is like this is the title of this chapter. This is important. Then the paragraph breaks, and then also the entire text breaks. Like there's a separation here. And yeah, he would do an introduction. Then also at the end of chapters would be a conclusion. Like you're supposed to, like I was supposed to do in English class for my essays or whatever. I'm like, oh, thank you. My English teacher said, you tell them, then you tell them again, then you tell them a third time, and that's your essay. That's all you got to do.
That's right.
And I said, oh,
You
thanks.
tell them with examples, and then you tell them what you just told them. Yeah. You tell them what you're going to tell them. You tell them with examples, and then you tell them what you just told them. That's the essay format. But historical writing might be, a little slightly different. But I mean, I know what essay structure is like, but this was a little bit different for me, and it was a little bit. It was hard. It was not easy, and it was hard to slog through a lot of the infighting, and without I wasn't able very well to make comparisons to find familiarity with the rest of the world, with the little bit of history that I know of the rest of the world. That was a little bit harder because of terminology that, number one, I'm unfamiliar with, or number two, I grew up spelling differently or knew by a different name. And some of the names have been changed. In the very early chapters, he talks about the barbarian invasion, now renamed to the big migration or something else. And so I may know one term, but if he doesn't redefine it for me or change the spelling, for example, Tatars, Tatars, I remember reading about Tartars and wondering,
Oh, yeah.
Who that was. And then it was after several references to Tatars that he said this is spelled Tartars in British English or something. And so
Oh, really?
that made it doubly hard. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you got and as those little anecdotes or introductions got better, they got stronger. I was like, why didn't you do this earlier on? And it's like, because it was prehistory. There's no written records. So yeah, as the documentation got better,
Yes.
the little
Yes.
introductions got stronger too. So
Yes.
there was little like subtle lessons throughout it where I was just realizing with this static book that the writer wrote it and the style kind of evolved as you went along. And
Necessarily so. Yeah.
and in the beginning, it became about how do you categorize? You got language categories like Slavic tribes, and I'm like, what is that? What's a Slav? I've heard of that. And then other things like the steppe, which is a geographical term, which means I guess it's like light forest or prairie. In America, we call them prairie, I guess. And then
I don't know. I think it's forest. That's what it said. But is that the agriculture? See, I'm still not clear. Is that the agricultural area? And also, how big is this agriculture? How big is this geographical area? I want to know. I'm not familiar with the names of these rivers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
So
you got
that was.
So you got land types like steppe, forest, and mountain. You got boundary types, which are rivers, and which would serve as boundaries, but also like are essential to survive. It was through this book I realized, because my students call it the left bank and right bank of Kiev, and I'm like, what? Don't you mean western or eastern? And they go, no, it's left and right, because
Don't you mean Paris? I've never heard that. Yeah.
What do you mean Paris?
Well, the left bank refers to the bank of the river in Paris.
Oh, well, it's because
that's the only
river,
reference I know to
it's the
left
direction the river flows. That river's left or river's right. So the Dnieper River goes north to south. So if you're facing south, the wait, the left side, the left side is the eastern to the east, and the right side is
Okay.
to the west. So yeah, that you had to orient yourself. Then okay, so let's say he's throwing out language terms, he's throwing out geography terms. Then he introduces the kingdoms or city states like the Muscovites, the Polish, the Lithuanians, the Romanians, the Ottomans, and the Tatars. And so you're, as I got to the later chapters, I was becoming more, forgiving of like, you're trying to anchor yourself with
Mm-hmm.
all these different motivations of people, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't have records really, but all we can do is trace through culture and language. Like, probably these people came from here. The Mongols show up. And so it was. I was like, man, this is quite
It
a.
was a challenge. It was a challenge because we're familiar maybe with the term city-state. And we know that that can refer to like Greece, and it can kind of refer to Italy, city-states. But it's also sort of tribal, sort of like Scottish clans. And so it's kind of, that's part of the difficulty of trying to equate it to something that is familiar. I mean, that's how you learn things, by putting it in a familiar box and trying to understand it. And, it's difficult. It was it was a challenge. I learned more about Ukraine, even though I know that not all of it penetrated. And I did my best with this giant legacy. But I mean, I'm better off for having read it. I'm glad I read it. But what a mess! What a mess in that area. Jeez.
Yep, like, yeah, you got. And then the last one I'll say is religion, because you had Roman Catholics, who have dominated from the Renaissance. They're just so rich, all this money flowing into Venice and Rome, I guess. But then you had Constantinople, which was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. So even the Roman Empire gets in there. So that's the Greek Orthodox Catholic. Greek
Right.
Orthodox Christian version, and they got their
Mm-hmm.
own style, and that's
Yep.
what dominated this area, which is Eastern Europe, Slavic countries,
Well,
and
but part of it, because Ukraine had that religious divide, right? And Ukraine kind of went with Poland, which was Roman Catholic, and other areas of Ukraine, which I still don't have a clear picture geographically, went with the Eastern Orthodox section. And then you got, Muslims, and then also throughout all of this history are Jews. And,
oh yeah,
that just so casually banned here and there, or having to be isolated here and there, or ghettoized here and there. It was just really, first of all, it was telling that the more things change, the more they stay the same. The age-old problems that we have are still with us, or we had, are still with us. And then, you're reading all this, and you're reading about these big guys, Genghis Khan and, Nicholas the czars. And then Hitler enters the scene. And geez, and this didn't even this stopped. The last note that I have on this, which I filled an entire notebook, was Paul Manafort. And that was the last note that I have on the book. We haven't even we got to Putin, but we didn't get to Putin's invasion of Ukraine in 2014, or 2022. That war has been going on for 4 years. So yeah, it's just, talk about history repeating itself. And it seems to have all repeated itself right here in this particular geographical area.
it is crazy. So I wanted to talk about first how the book is just an epic, like, architecture of information that flows slowly forward in time. then about the different components or like facets of motivation. The other one is language. So once the other powerful city states got in there, they wanted to control the region because Ukraine is valuable. It has this black volcanic soil that just grows food like crazy. And later, gas and coal was discovered there. But they try to suppress the language, no Ukrainian language. You have to learn Polish or you have to learn Russian. And then like literally split down the middle. They're just and yeah, it's then this is a whole other dimension how they would, you know, like one style is we'll be more friendly to the Ukrainians. You can do your own religion. You can speak your own language. We'll let your schools, and that will generate tension to, you know, press against Russia, which is our true enemy. And then the Moscovites, before Russia was like a country, that they would just iron fist, heavy hand, just dominate and be like, you are Russians and our enemy is Poland. So this pressure system through the buffer of Ukraine to try to inflict damage on the true enemy, which was the Polish kingdom, which I didn't even know Poland had a king. I had a kingdom.
Yeah, I know.
And Russia. So that's was like the next level of like a multiple utilizing language, religion, food, work to damage someone else, like a proxy, but not even like we're trying to. I don't know. It's just crazy.
It's complicated. Well, I think the through line there is that Ukraine, first of all, it seemed to me in the early history, the early historical explanation, it was all about land acquisition and empire building, and just land acquisition, land acquisition, land acquisition. And Ukraine, because it was a valuable land, ended up being rather diverse in its population because it was acquired by different contentious empires, east and west of it, east and west and sort of north of it. And Ukraine always sort of longed for independence and nationality, but they were never strong enough. They wanted to establish their nationhood, but with the protection of some big empire like Russia or USSR or the Austro-Poland people or the Turks, the Ottomans, whoever was the current invader. But that never works. It never works that let's do a nice little confederation of states, or we'll be friendly with you, but leave us our autonomy. It rarely works. And the two major players do exactly what you said, play off each other through the buffer. That's why it's called buffeting, the Ukraine by one side being nice, we'll give you some autonomy, we'll accommodate what you want, and the other one is the iron fist. No, we're just going to squash it. You just have to do what we say and starve in the meantime. So it really was a battleground, much to the detriment of the people, just so the big powers, the empires, or what we used to call superpowers, could use it and its people and its land for their own benefit, and then throw it away when it wasn't necessary, or reinvade when they needed to.
Yep. So now, like, okay, so I think yep. The book, I've said enough about the book. Now, what actually happened, there were people who said, we are Ukraine, we have our own language. And the whole struggle was certain people saying, like, look, we got to go for it. Now's our chance. Let's do this thing together. Versus, like, nah, these the, it's better if we stick with them. We stick with Russia. Or it's
Mm-hmm.
better if we stick with them. And that's just like the timeless struggle of someone says we have to go for it, and they've just failed. They failed just over and over again
Over
for
and over and over
500
again.
years. It
Yes.
just didn't work. And
And and that's where I see a parallel with Scotland. And way back, like 500, I think it was, Robert the Bruce. That's Braveheart. You can unite the clans, and yet he tried it, but then the clan infighting happens because everybody wants their little scrap of land and power as a chieftain. And then later with Outlander, you can unite the clans to fight against the English. We want to fight against the English, but these revolutions were impossible. They never could, the clan leaders could never agree. And so the same thing is going on here, just as the same thing goes along with goes on in almost any country. There's a diversity of ideas, and once you draw a hard line and refuse to compromise, this is the way it should be, not give a little, get a little, then you can't win because you never fully unite.
yeah, and then it speaks to the generational historic mindset of like even like Israel. Like we've been messed with for thousands of years. Now we've got our own country. We're gonna go for it, like all in. And
Mm-hmm.
that could be how they're thinking about it. Like I'm not. It's not only me. It's not even only my kids. I'm thinking about what I'm gonna give up what thousands of years have dreamed about. That's gonna be me. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then even China thinks that way. Like, yeah, we've been humiliated for, we used to be thousands of years of like an empire too. Only in the last 100 years we were, really screwed up by these foreign invaders. Now we're back, which is the market has corrected itself. Or
Sort of. Yeah.
and probably India thinks that way too. Like, yeah, we were really humiliated and screwed up by these foreigners. Now we're back. So the motivations of these people, if they have that, which Americans can't even like imagine, we're just all like, yeah, but what about me right now? Or like my
Mm-hmm.
kids. I don't even actually know what my parents, grandparents, they didn't really want anything. So really, it's just me. What do I want, and what do I want to give
Yeah.
my kids? But other cultures with this history of literally neighbors, yeah, Russia's been at us for 500 years, 500 years, and so it's just nuts.
Well, that's interesting. I was struggling with that point also because the early history is all about land acquisition, domination. It seemed the pattern was invade, invade and just take over, move in and take over, or invade and pillage and go away, and then say, okay, let's trade. Maybe they have something to trade. Maybe the occupied country had something worth buying, and then establishing trade routes, and then the need for protection of those trade routes. So the dominating country could say, okay, we're going to invade you. Okay, we're going to invade you and take over your country. Okay, well, we'll invade you, take over your country for a little while, but then we'll go back. But let's make trade. We'll be in charge of the trade routes, and then we'll protect them. And so then you have to pay tribute to us, or you have to pay attention to us. Otherwise, you got no trade, baby. And here we are with the Strait of Hormuz today, right? It's the same situation. So early on, history seemed to be land acquisition to build these empires. The peasants were just, ants that somebody with power could use. It wasn't until you have an establishment of a country that you can begin to establish any kind of culture. And in order to do that, you have to have language and you have to have education so that you can tell stories and so that you can use that tradition to sort of build on. And if you don't have that, then you're just buffeted between big superpowers. But once you can get an idea of an identity, of nationality, then you have something or some concept that you can begin to see as an entity that you might want to fight for. And then it becomes about people, rather than just movement of borders between big giant superpowers. And yet the people, in spite of the culture, seem to do the same things that the old emperors used to do. And just, if they're not acquiring land, they're at least acquiring power over the labor of people, if not slaves, then communist slave labor, or access to their product without any kind of argument. And I'm wondering, in the 60s so this led to, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here, but when I was in college in the 70s, anthropology was huge. Everybody loved to study anthropology. What is the history of culture, and especially cultural anthropology, more than archaeology, at least the people that I knew. And I think there is perhaps no, it's not coincidental that anthropology's popularity diminished, and now we have people at war, and we have Make America Great Again and America First, and the lessening of cooperation, because anthropology could teach you what was important about cooperation between countries and nationalities. And that faded so that everybody's just grubbing for money or land or something like that. And I think that I just think those concepts probably go hand in hand. I'm not exactly sure how, but I have this gut feeling that they do.
Well, yeah. So you got a problem. You got everybody messing with you, taking your food, taking your people, fighting wars you don't even want, controlling your religion, saying you can't speak a language at your work. So then how do you say you want to go for it and your rival is, we should cut a deal with them. It's better. Our chance will come later. But then it's got, how do you mobilize, the rabble of your country who are probably like largely ignorant and they're just trying to survive. The problems of the capital are hundreds of miles away. What do I care about that? Who I have no control over anything. So then then it becomes the arguments of, well, what method do we use to mobilize the nation towards an effort? And it's like, do we explain it to them? And that's where, those lessons, like, well, that definitely doesn't work, because people they're not equipped to comprehend such, enormous motivations or economics of things. Okay, well, that's not going to work. Do we go with nationalism? Like, we use folk heroes. We leverage the culture into saying, we deserve to be ourselves. What was the other one? It was there was one chapter about that, nationalism versus communism. So okay, how about this theory? Okay, so I can't intellectually communicate to you the actual theory of what's happening here. Let's hold in our minds that, our land is this, they're taking our money, blah blah blah. Okay, never mind that. What if there was a way where all the bosses are gone, you don't have to work, everybody owns the land, we're all just normal people together? Now, what if I told you that could work? And they're like, oh, you can do that? Like, of course we can. So it totally makes sense. Communism, you've got just a rabble of people just digging ditches, bent over, just totally ignorant. So you got a Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh tried to write to the U.S. like, dude, we're in this situation too. We need freedom, and U.S. just threw that letter in the garbage. And he goes, okay, well, that didn't work. We literally can't partner with someone. We've got China and Japan messing with us. Okay, Ho Chi Minh, what if I told you all we could all just own the land, there are no leaders, and it's just total harmony, utopia? And people are like, yeah, let's do that. And you brainwash them into it. So, and so, yeah, that was a really interesting chapter. How do we definitely can't teach them what's really happening. We got to either go with folk history, Cossack imagery, or
Right. Right.
theoretical future that's impossible, but we'll get them to pick up their pitchforks and, fight for it.
Yeah.
But once it's installed, you can't wash it out. You're like, well, where's the utopia? You said, and like, yeah, that's never mind that. Actually, we got another one. We got to fight these people, and then we got the utopia. That's what Mao was doing in China. He just would keep once he had full power. He was like, okay, well, the next thing, we got to get rid of these intellectuals, the teachers, the foreigners. They're the enemy. It's like, okay, well, they're gone. Now what? We need to get rid of our own history. Anything that is old has got to go. So he would just have his followers revolt over and over again because there's no solution, because there is no communist utopia.
There isn't. There is no utopia. Yeah. So yeah, anything that's been tainted by the intellectuals or bothered by immigrants or whatever will they'll use whatever will get people to move. So it's propaganda in whatever using whatever tools within propaganda, whether it's an appeal to tradition or appeal to modernism or appeal to, foreign invaders or, current utopia, whatever you can convince them to try for a while. But what happens is the leaders always build up their own wealth at the expense of the peasant class remains the peasant class, whether you call them workers or middle class. They remain the peasant class anyway, and somebody's getting rich.
Yeah. So this was the first book ever I heard. I kind of comprehended a reasonable argument to domino theory. Like, we got to get these communists out. Once they start all thinking that way, they're gonna just keep fighting forever. You can't uninstall it. So you gotta nip it in the bud, stamp it out now. Or in America, the Red Scare, any communist, turn them in because it's too dangerous. And so this was the first time I realized, like, because before this book I thought, whatever, you can think whatever you want. I mean, who cares? But now it's like, no, once they're hungry for that, I mean, sure, Christianity, do this, you go to heaven, but once you're dead, you're gone. But if you're looking for this heaven on earth and some charismatic communist leader tells you, no, we can make it happen, and it of course doesn't, then you've got a real shitstorm that you can't erase. You can't get rid of it. So this was the first time I thought that about anti-communist
because
thought.
that's not based on, vague tradition or even historical concept. It's real. I mean, during this was also interesting to me because the later chapters, then I began to recognize names, right? I mean, what was interesting, I thought, in the early part of the book is that the first sort of leader in Ukraine, or the first name in Ukraine, was Volodymyr, right? And the president of Ukraine now is which of course is the Ukraine version of Vladimir. And that took a little while to realize as well. But building that mythology, Volodymyr, or the Rus people, or the Cossacks, that takes time, education, language, storytelling, and leisure. It also takes leisure. If you're working your brains out, you don't have time to consider those things. But when we get to the big world wars, major events, and the fallout from those, I found that also interesting because the incredible loss of life is sort of like the plague in Europe, wiped out a quarter of the population, and without enough people to support a nation or even an area, life is just not sustainable. And so, not to mention trying to recover from the trauma of war or plague in your area or even among your family. That kind of trauma of World War I and later World War II, I found that educational and very interesting that the loss in population plus the trauma, plus the loss of the economy was always in ruins and the land often was destroyed, as well as any kind of machinery and modern warfare was also destroyed. But you also lost the people that knew how to do any of those things. So that I found interesting. And if you are already buffeted and sort of at the mercy of higher countries, or at least even higher leaders, you cannot even begin to recreate what you had before that. Very difficult.
Yeah, you could say that's America benefits from being the reserve currency and being the dominant economy, but also when a country starts going down, the scientists and professionals, they leave, and the best place to go is America. So we get literally the best people. That's why Taiwan is so strong, because those people they got out. They left the mainland and got rid of the local native people who lived in Taiwan and said, "This is now our China," and the smartest people, evacuated to there. Speaking of, I don't know, but yeah, little did I know that "Fiddler on the Roof" actually was a bunch of Ukrainians singing and bottle
Shalom
dancing
Aleichem.
around. I mean, what the heck?
Yes.
I was in that
Yeah.
musical. I was a Ukrainian rabbi when I was 16, so that was
Yes.
a shock. The writer, anti-Semitism was growing. He left, I think, in 1908, and he wrote these short stories about Tevye the dairyman. And in 1960s, they made a musical, and in 1970, they made a movie, and it just I didn't really. When I was that age, I was like, I don't know why this is significant. Why is this held up so high? This seems so not American. And but yeah, it's about Ukrainians. So that was very surprising.
Oh yeah, and the backdrop of that musical were Russian pogroms. And you've probably heard the expression "beyond the pale." That's beyond the pale. That's based on that Pale of Settlement, where they ghettoized Jews and made them live in a certain area, and that was Ukraine also. So for years, I was surprised to see for years Ukraine was called Little Russia, and it became a land that was alternately dumped on or used. Either they took all their grain and they forced this collectivism or forced labor, and then also dumped all this Pale of Settlement was established in Ukraine, where all these, I don't know, it was really messed up. During those chapters, I had to take a lot of breaks because it was really a horrible thing to read about.
Yeah, it's even, I was thinking, I don't know if this is right, but other countries that benefit, England, the UK, surrounded by water, it's got this natural, it's just naturally difficult to, although some did, like the Vikings or, French or whatever. Or Italy is just surrounded by water, and then you got the mountains, the Alps, I guess, on top. And Japan is surrounded by water, but Ukraine it's just got an open door. The east side, the west side, and you just walk right in. Just say hello, we're back, and you're like, God, how do we friggin' secure this? And
exactly,
it's just like, yeah, it's brutal. It's how some countries just luckily had, or America, yeah, we're over here, and there's water both sides, and some just were, lucked out with these geographic barriers. But Ukraine is just, I think the Mongols just rode right in on their horses all the way over.
Yep. I think there were not any natural, not strong enough natural barriers to prevent people from coming in. Of course, the Vikings went everywhere and just overcame anything that was in their way. But I think you're right about that. And they found this great fertile valley, or this great area that was going to become the breadbasket of Europe. And so, because they were never large enough or strong enough to defend themselves, they never had an adequate army, and they never had that kind of sense of national identity. I think that becomes part of the tradition and part of the psyche also. because they had been used and abused by neighboring countries for so many years. It takes, and then when you do establish independence, in the 20th century, they had to struggle because even though they came to sort of a democratic situation late, they had to go through the same growing pains as any country has to go through. And it wasn't sanitized because we're all seeing it writ large on the internet or CNN or Daily News. There's no opportunity to build tradition or build a myth because we all see it.
Yep. So now we've got about 20 minutes left in this podcast, so we can get to the modern history. So then we get to the German word Lebensraum, which means living space. And so I asked AI about this, like, what is that? I've heard of that. And it said that other European countries were colonizing the world, making money, and Hitler promoted this idea like, well, we're not going to do that. It's already, I guess we're behind, and we're totally annihilated by World War One. But we definitely need something. We need more space, which we need for more pure Germans to live, and we're taking it in Eastern Europe. These other countries, France and England, can take the world. We're going east, and what they meant was Ukraine via Poland, and they knew eventually a confrontation with Russia was going to happen. So that was their kind of goal, I guess, as Germany was kind of leading on the British, or we just want this, then it'll be enough. Don't worry about it. But the appeasement, it was never enough, because that's what they wanted. They wanted Ukraine was their target, which I didn't know. And so the numbers are, oh shoot, I just had it open. Where? What the heck? Oh, here it is. So, Ukraine, in that World War II, Ukraine lost 6.8 million people, which was 17% of their population, which is only about 500,000 fewer people lost than Germany, who has been the bad guy in movies for 70 years. That, they're so bad. So they lost 7.4 million, or 10%. And Japan, which had 2 nuclear bombs dropped on them, lost 3.1 million. So Japan lost half as many people as Ukraine in the war. And according to American, our standard history that we consume, Ukraine's not even a main character in that war at all. We didn't even know they're in it. And they lost almost as much as one of the main bad guys, and then half and double as the other bad guy.
And probably what contributes to that high number is the fact that many Jews were shunted to Ukraine. And so with Hitler's campaign to exterminate the Jews, that number probably includes many Jews that were forced to live in Ukraine.
Yeah,
it includes... They're not soldiers. It's casualties of and death camps.
It's everyone. And also the Russians would scoop up just Ukrainian fighters like you fighting for us now. They just got hit on every which way.
Yes.
Then you got then the war's over. Russia, we've like, the standard story is that America wins, we're the hero, Captain America, everyone thanks us, and Russia, helped. And then the thing that history people point out, well, actually, Russia, threw way more bodies at it. They fought way longer, and America came in at the last second and then kind of pushed the ball over the into the touchdown. But, not only. Nobody knows about... That's what I told my students. Nobody knows this about Ukraine. Like, nobody has any idea about that. But then...
Nobody knew that the meeting took place in Ukraine, right? The meeting between Churchill, Stalin, and FDR. It was in Ukraine, right? I think.
I don't even know.
I don't remember now. I may have that confused. But at the end of the war, when they, after the surrender of everybody and the defeat of Germany, then those three big honchos meet together and sort of divide up the world. And Russia got Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, then you got this son of a bitch, Stalin, who
Oh my
I've known
gosh.
I've known he's a bad guy. It's a bad name. Hitler's worst. I think I still think Mao is the absolute worst, but Stalin just so Ukraine was also a Soviet kind of country. A Soviet means a collectivized operating unit of
Yeah.
housing and work all together. That's a Soviet, and so and so they want independence. We want to be our own Soviet thing, but we're still Soviet. But we want our own country. And Stalin says like, well, we're gonna take all your food because we need it, and that way you'll learn your place.
Mm-hmm.
So 1959, there's a famine of oh no, wait, that's not right. Oh shoot, I don't have it. That's China. What? Oh, I messed up.
Well, it was during the Cold War period, and it was probably in the 50s. There, I don't have the date, but this is they starved the people. They starved the people. They starved the people more than once. I mean, Stalin starved them once, and it had this forced collectivism of the farm, so there was no ownership. Plus, because he believed that because they believed that Germany was going to attack Russia during World War II, he had devoted Ukraine to heavy industry. So the people of Ukraine lost their farms, any ownership that they had of farm. They were forced collectivism, and then they also had to go and work as laborers in these industrial factories to build up the arsenal for Russia. So there was a planned, I don't know if it was a planned famine, but there was a famine by design. I mean, it wasn't accidental that Ukraine people starved any more than Irish people starved when they were subject to English rule.
Yeah, this is actually, I was screwed up. It was the 1930s. It's called the
Stalin.
Holodomor, the Great Famine. And 4 million starved, 1 out of 8 people. 1933, the summer, was like the most brutal time. So it was before the war. And then I have another note.
But Stalin was in charge, yeah.
Yeah, the worst was China, 1959. 30 million people starved. But that was just his total ignorance. He had just no idea what he was doing. Stalin was intentional. We're coming to take all your food. We're just taking it. So
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Genocide. It's a genocide.
Yeah, 2006, it was ruled a genocide. Then you got fast forwarding to 1986, the Chernobyl.
Wait, don't go past.
Oh,
don't go past. Don't go up to 1986 yet, because Brezhnev. I mean, after Stalin, there's Khrushchev during the Cold War period, right?
I know
and
Brezhnev.
Then Brezhnev. And then Brezhnev, who returned to Stalinist policy. Khrushchev was Ukrainian, in fact, and did more accommodation and elevated the status of Ukraine. But then Brezhnev came in, and he returned to Stalin policies. But after Brezhnev, there was Gorbachev. Okay, and he had a softening toward the West. He also instituted 2 policies. One was called glasnost, which is openness.
Yep.
The problem with that is that everybody sees how bad the situation is, because during Brezhnev's period, the economy stagnated completely or went into decline. And he also had perestroika, a restructuring of the local power, restructuring in favor of local power,
right.
Which means Ukraine got a little bit of autonomy, and it upset all the party leaders in Moscow.
Yep.
And then eventually, détente, a softening with the West, with Gorbachev, until he was sort of ousted and Yeltsin got in and then Putin.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's freaking crazy. Yeah, I did look up those
It
words
is.
too. I didn't put those into my notes for this.
So those words are familiar to me. Those are words that I grew up with, right? I mean, I grew up going to church on Sunday playing for the conversion of Russia, right?
What do you
Every
mean?
Sunday we
Praying.
prayed for the conversion of Russia, because they were anti-God communists.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so we are the
so
rabble in that case. No, don't you understand? Glasnost is
totally.
good. Perestroika means this, and you're like, what? What is it? What? Never mind that. Just pray. There, it's the devil. The devil is making them be communist and Soviets. What even is a Soviet? You don't know. I don't even know. Just pray. Let us pray. And so
It's just they're at the mercy. Ukraine was just at the mercy of one leader or another. However crazy, if it's a czar or if it's a Polish king or if it's a Russian communist president, they are just at the mercy of this identity politics and the cult of the personality.
Yep.
And
The
they
other
suffered for it.
other word is the Bolsheviks. That was a thing I had to learn in history class, and I'm like, why do I care about this? And yeah, they were the kind of communist revolutionaries who I guess stormed the palace, took out whoever it was, King Alexander or Nicholas or whoever it was,
Tsar Nicholas, yeah.
and then
Killed his entire family.
yeah,
Took over all the property. That's what they took over all property, made intellectuals move in. That's the playbook.
So you got Bolshevism is a militant version of like we're all taking it over, in with the foundation of this communist theory. You know, Mao style is through like let's go back to an agrarian image. We're all hardworking or I don't know. So there's just all different flavors of all these theories. But speaking of, it was I think it was under Gorbachev that the Chernobyl nuclear RMBK reactor, which had design flaws and was like 70 miles north of Kiev, I think, like really, like not even far, melted down, and the operators were Ukrainian, but they had to follow orders from Moscow, who just controlled everything. And it melted down. It breached, and that poison went into the air, worth like 500 nuclear bombs, radiation. And that was 86. So even I was alive when an actual meltdown is happening. And they were told like, no, it's fine. Just same as today, inept leaders say, don't tell everybody. It'll blow away. It'll blow away like the flu, like coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, that sounds so familiar, doesn't it? And there is a film. I think it's on one of the streaming services called Chernobyl, which is very interesting to watch. And so what you blame in that scenario is, first of all, the speed of building, just like Russian increase in industrialization. They created a lot of heavy industry items, but they were shoddy. They were poor workmanship. And so Chernobyl was no different. It was, not made well. And then the difficulty of, you can't have a whistleblower. There's no such thing as a whistleblower in this situation, because they are all looking at each other and judging and being careful where they step so that they don't get out of the, cross any kind of party line or get out of step with anybody else.
Yep. Yeah. So funny. That's just nuts. Like, that's why everyone's worried about China and, oh my God, they got all these things. And I'm like, their way just, I have to believe it can't work. Like, even if, they've got this huge military. Everyone's, oh, they could do what they'll be dominant, and it's like, you can't have a military that runs on truth not actually flowing upward. Like if truth is hidden or delayed, you're you're they're at just such a disadvantage that it just it's not as scary as it seems. I think that's
Well, it
why.
may not be as scary as it seems, but it will take time to reveal. And in the meantime, people get killed or people get, damage happens. It's sort of like climate change. Well, they'll find out the truth eventually that, this is really serious and dangerous. But in the meantime, people get asthma, people have this, people die. So that's the problem. And so that's why people become cynics and give up. they because they don't learn history and they don't learn from history. That's the difficulty, learning from history and amending your processes, amending your behavior so that you don't do the same things over and over again. But we don't seem capable of that. Humans don't seem capable of that.
Yep. The book said that, the Chernobyl and memory of the Holodomor famine was what really ramped it up towards independence and freedom. And then the last chapters get into the nitty gritty of actual political, bribery and scandal and recordings. Names like Leonid Kuchma, who was a hometown hero, but I think even he knew we have to work with these oligarchs and party bosses. Mm-hmm. We can't just kind of break away from it immediately. He was caught on tape. Then another guy, Yanukovych, who was a Putin favorite, that's the guy who's gonna be my puppet or something. Yushchenko, who was another hometown hero, he gets poisoned, and so that was 2004, like literally a poisoning.
Yes. Well,
he was
and
the
the
third
guy
president.
and the Russian dissident who was in prison, who died, who was poisoned before he was in prison and died in prison of poison. This is Putin's favorite technique, I think.
And yep. Oh, an election that was clearly tampered with, and the country rallies and says that's unacceptable. We're doing a whole other election, which usually don't go well because people don't want to care anymore. But actually, it worked, and Yushchenko wins. And then another scandal. The Yanukovych becomes president later. He's Putin's favorite. Everyone pressures him to sign an agreement with the EU, not join the EU, but a cooperation deal. But then the last second backs out, says, no, actually, we can't do this. I'm not going to do it. And everyone's outraged. He runs away. He escapes his own country. And then a provisional government is set up. This is like 2013. Like, I'm trying to imagine America having a provisional government, like, which is someone, okay, you, me, and you, we have to take charge of this thing. So hopefully no one kills us. And that's when Putin invades Crimea, because his guy ran away. The Ukrainians stood up to him, and then he's like, well, I guess I gotta show them who's boss. And then 12 years later, Russia's like gonna collapse, and it's just going nowhere.
Yeah, and they're still fighting a war with Ukraine. And in the meantime, Ukraine had another huge election, huge turnouts, and Zelensky was, elected president. And, the comedian. This is what we hear about Volodymyr Zelensky. He's a comedian, but he's also a businessman, and he also has a law degree. Uh-oh, somebody's in trouble in Japan.
Yeah, but another huge middle finger is Hungary gets rid of Orban, another Putin pick. So that's why it all comes together. That's why the theories of authoritarianism and deprogramming the Soviet or communist ideas for actual truth and discussion and debate is, although it's annoying and difficult to understand, it just is the only way that works the best, even though it's bad. It's
Wait, what's the best way that works?
like just democratic argument.
Oh, yeah. It's slow and it's troublesome. Yes. And you don't make all the progress that you want to make. Progress happens in fits and starts and less than you want. But yes, it is the only way. It
and
seems to me.
and you have to, yeah, like you see how once you get the populace, like the scared, the rabble, like once you get them fired up, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like this, if you feed just fear and some fantasy, some delusion, we're literally going to go not only go nowhere, we're going to go backwards. And then you're screwed anyway, because once you fail at it, inevitably they're going to get angry at you. So like open a freaking book about Ukraine. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all right in there.
It's all there. It's all happened before, because this is exactly where we are in the United States right now.
Yep.
We are on the downward spiral before it all, something collapses and some better angels take their role. I don't know. This huge book, and I probably will keep this book. I don't know if I'll ever read it again, but it did teach me a lot. It all happened in Ukraine, in this country that we know so little about, but it's in the news every day. It's in the news every day, and we don't know very much about it. They've gone through every permutation of historical disaster and treachery, and it's all here. Pretty comprehensive, but people don't learn from history.
Yeah, it's also, you look at it next door. Next door to Ukraine's a huge country, bigger than Germany and France and everything. But then next door to it is Kazakhstan, which was also a Soviet region too.
They called them Soviet satellite. They'd call them a satellite country.
But they don't seem to care about that. If you look at it just on Google Maps, the whole area is just brown, I guess rocky, desert-ish area. So like, well, that might be more land, but there's just, the geography doesn't support any relevance. But yeah, Ukraine has got the gas. It has the Black Sea, which is strategic, and the Black Sea gives access, I think. Yeah. Oh yeah.
To the Mediterranean.
Through the Istanbul, they can get through there into the Mediterranean. Mediterranean goes out to the Red Sea by Suez Canal or to the Atlantic Ocean.
Gibraltar. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you got other ones
and
too.
Those are all really basic concerns that have been evident throughout history. And, I can remember when I was in school saying, oh, well, Russia wants that warm water port, or maybe it was something I read about World War II. It's, these issues, they don't go away, and people just continue to fight over them instead of somehow making peace with cooperating. I don't know.
Yep. So, yep. The group I teach with is called Balakun, which means like chatterbox. And so it's just Ukrainians want to learn English and practice. So it's like a volunteer group, but it's what's funny here too, before we finish, is there is a Ukrainian sumo wrestler who was literally a refugee from the eastern side of Ukraine, which was getting blown up. And so he came to Japan at age like 18, started learning sumo, and now he's 22 and he's like dominating.
Oh, wow.
He's on track to become the first yokozuna of Europe. There have been American from Hawaii yokozunas, but he would be the first European. And so his name's, and he has a sumo name, which is Ao Nishiki. And he's just like amazingly good at it. I saw him on the train post a drink ad of him holding a drink. So he's Japan, they like Ukraine just because the the story is clearly that they're the good guys. But
Interesting. Very interesting.
do we have one for the next book?
You know, I do have one, because this part of something that I found fascinating in this book was that during World War I, there were countless internment camps for potential enemy aliens, especially in areas of Europe where there was a lot of immigration or, diversity. So I want to read Farewell to Manzanar
Oh, yeah.
by Jean Watasuki Houston.
I read that in
and
like 7th
James
grade.
Houston. Oh, did you really?
Yep.
Do you mind reading it again? I've never read it.
Yeah, no. And also, Uncle Dick was in the movie.
Uncle Dick was in the movie. I've been to Manzanar with Tadashi, and I told the clerks at Manzanar, I said, here's something interesting. My brother was in the movie. He was a horrible, nasty guard standing outside the bus where Pat Morita had to go in to the bus. And my brother's niece, Anna, and Pat Morita's niece were best friends in high school.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, Farewell to Manzanar by Jean Watasuki Houston. That'll be our next book.
We'll get on it using AI
Signing
and notes and everything.
Oh gosh, and it's local, I think, so it should be good and interesting. Until next time.
Catch you next time.